The Case Study of Vanitas is a pleasant surprise of the season. Coming into it, I didn't think it would be one that appeals to me. It reminded me a lot of Black Butler at the beginning of it, and I don't enjoy Black Butler for a number of reasons, the relationship between Sebastian and Ciel being one of them, but stylistically it just doesn't really fit in with what I want from a series. And when watching the Case Study of Vanitas, it did remind me a lot of Black Butler, but in the way that I think it's what Black Butler should have been. It is an improvement on what Black Butler is. Taking place in late 19th century Victorian era Paris, this series follows the vampire named Noe, who was a vampire born under the red moon. Now, you may be thinking, what does that mean? Well, in this series there are two types of vampires. The majority of vampires are vampires born under the red moon, which are generally the kind of vampires we think about. They suck blood, they're far more powerful than people, but they don't transform into bats, and they don't really mind being in the sunlight at all, so they aren't a whole lot like vampires. You know, outside of the fact that they're very strong and suck blood, I don't really know how they are like vampires, but it doesn't really matter. They're called vampires in this series, and I just let that go. But there are two types of vampires: the vampires born under the red moon, and a vampire named Vanitas born under the blue moon. In a sequence that begins the series, it's explained that the blue moon vampire, Vanitas, was kicked out of the red vampire society as they found them weird. They just didn't want to be around them. So our main character Noe has been given a task by his teacher to seek out the vampire of the blue moon, Vanitas, and their book. Mainly their book, to study it. While on an airship to Paris, he runs into another vampire who becomes corrupted, which is a sickness that goes through certain types of vampires that makes them go mad, slaughtering all around them. In this crucial moment, a strange human appears, wielding the blue book of Vanitas, calling himself Vanitas, and casting a spell to cure the vampire of their derangement, which previous to this had thought to be completely impossible. Noe decides that even though this human who calls himself Vanitas is not the vampire he had been told about, they wield the book that they are looking for, so they decide to follow after them and learn more about them and how they can cure people of the derangement that plagues these vampires. The world of Vanitas is incredibly interesting and actually pretty well executed. Now, it is 19th century time, but they have a lot of pretty modern technology, like airships. Those shouldn't have existed back then, but because of a special power source at the time, it has made this a steampunk world. And I like the steampunk aesthetic. It's not overbearing in this series at all either. It adds a bit more excitement to the 19th century setting, giving them an ability to have more creative freedom on what they can include in this kind of world. The series in total just kind of makes everything its own. As I mentioned before, vampires in this series don't really seem like vampires we know from the stories of Dracula, but it doesn't really matter. It has its own interpretation of what vampires are, and as the series is going, it gets into what it believes that they are and how exactly they work, and I can accept that just perfectly fine. The way they interact in the human world is different. Apparently at some point humans and vampires had a war, and vampires aren't supposed to be in this world, but they are there. And also there is an alternate world where vampires actually exist. The lore of this series seems really interesting, but you don't really need to get into the lore to just see a very entertaining series. Animated by Studio Bones, this series is absolutely beautiful, as you would expect from any kind of Bones production. If you like pretty boys doing things in an anime, like say in Skate the Infinite, then this anime actually is a pretty good follow-up to that, because there's a lot of really pretty people in this. I also found the humor to be incredibly pleasant and entertaining. I watched a few of the episodes in dub since they are out now. It's not all dubbed, you know, it's a few episodes behind, but I've watched a few of them that are dubbed, and I enjoy the English dub as well. They really nail a lot of those jokes also. And I'll say a lot of anime dubs, I know people have a very set idea of what those are, but there's a lot that are really, really well done, especially when they go with humor, and the humor in this dub is great. I had no problems with it. There's mystery around why exactly these vampires are dealing with this curse, or who Vanitas really is, what his backstory is, and I find that all to be incredibly compelling. Vanitas themselves is kind of a co-protagonist. Noe and Vanitas share the limelight in that sense, and Vanitas is a complete asshole protagonist, which I really enjoy. More and more, anime has been embracing having characters who just kind of are dicks, and I think it's more entertaining that way, especially when the series takes a lot of effort to kick Vanitas down a peg constantly. The series so far feels like it's barely scratched the surface of the lore and deep story that is being set up right now, and when it gets further into it, maybe that devolves into being just completely ridiculous, like Black Butler kind of of did, like a lot of anime that try to be a little smarter than the average anime tend to do. These kind of series are really interesting, have compelling ideas, and has compelling questions about the characters that they set up, but sometimes those stories can just completely devolve and go off the rails. It's an unfortunate side effect that happens all too much in anime. And while I'm cautioning about that, I don't believe Vanitas is going to go down that route. It seems really well grounded, and I think very clearly explains its concepts to its audience. While it's a bit strange, and I'm sure vampire lovers are going to have some qualms with the portrayal of vampires in this series, or the usage of the name vampires for characters that don't seem to carry a lot of the characteristics of the stereotypical vampire, I would like to remind people that vampires are not real. And if a story wants to reinterpret them and use their aesthetic and use these ideas of blood-sucking powerful monsters who live amongst humans, then I say go for it. As long as the story is interesting, then that's all that matters. And this story is interesting. The characters are fun. Noe, Vanitas, and all the people they meet along the way, they have their own quirks and humor that just really works. While it's not groundbreaking for anime, it is a very pleasant series to watch. Definitely one of the most pleasant series I've seen in the season. It's an anime that I have constantly wanting to just watch whenever there's new episodes. It's one that has me keep coming back, and that's the important thing with a series, if it holds your attention. And so far, it completely has. Small thing I want to toss in here, I really love how one of the vampires is named Orlok, which is a reference to the first vampire movie, Nosferatu, and its character, Count Orlok. It's just a nice little reference. The character even looks a little bit like Count Orlok. Orlok in general is just such a fun name, so I don't know. Just really glad to see it in anime. It's a fun little reference that I enjoy. I guess I don't really have a whole much more to get into outside of that. It's well animated, well executed. The characters are fun. The jokes are funny. It's not creepy in any sort of way for the most part, and I think the steampunk world and aesthetic and the lore that it's building up are going to be very fun to watch as it goes along. So I highly recommend the Case Study of Vanitas. Give it a try. I think you'll enjoy it. I think it's definitely one of the strongest anime of this season, which has in a lot of ways unfortunately disappointed me, but there's a few bright spots and we're going to be getting to those also. So be sure to stick around for more anime reviews from me. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. I've got a few anime reviews of this season right on the docket here coming on up. With all that said here, I want to thank you for sticking around. I want you to have a great day, a great night, or whatever it is you're having, and stay rad.